Back to trending SCV, where we're going to hit some of the local topics, local issues, local. Well, I'm not going to hit the local candidates. We're going to talk about the local candidates. You know, you don't have to get dressed up for me, Gibbs.
No, I didn't. I just like to show you up. It's normally not this hard either.
You know, purple.
By the way, this is a tie, not a napkin.
That's no, well, not in my world. Purple, huh?
If you,
You know, you're the only guy I know that wears these kind of pseudo outrageous colors and gets away with it. Maybe because of your red hair.
well, I can pull it off.
I would just look like a big balloon. With
Well, yeah, that or like you
solid
start on a kid '90s show in the kids, like you were like a dinosaur, right?
I know, right? Anyway.
Like my Barney reference.
Yeah.
I love Bernie.
You know what? If it wasn't this early, there's something I would say, but I'm afraid there's kids riding around in a car.
Oh, I was gonna say this. It's 11 o'clock.
So, hey, listen, we've got a special guest coming on about quarter past.
Who we got?
And for
Are we telling anybody?
No, for those younger people, quarter past is 15 minutes past the hour. Okay. So,
So at 11:15,
yes.
Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
Right.
Grandpa.
well, half past, right? Give us a quick rundown of the event last night.
Oh my goodness! Yes, the Valley Industry Association held the first City Council Candidates Forum for this campaign season, and it's kind of funny. I'd worked all day up at Vandenberg, so I rushed down and got cleaned up and went over.
Oh, you work at Vandenberg, okay.
I didn't know working at
An
an installation where we launched rockets. I didn't know that was hoity-toity.
Cool. I mean, you're actually really a rocket scientist, so to speak. But go ahead.
Sometimes. I mean, I play them.
Stay on track.
Oh, anyway, so no, it actually was a very good event. I thought Via did a very nice job. All of the candidates were very respectful, which is normally what you hope for, but don't necessarily always get in political debates. But all 9 of these city council candidates were there. All spoke their piece. How much more specific do you want to hear than that?
Come on.
See, call that a
Really?
cliffhanger, Patty.
I mean, seriously, everybody was nice, and they all, kissed and made up after. No, come on, give us the dirt here. Come on, it's just you and me.
The dirt. It's just you and me. And
come on, I mean, seriously, who kicked who did what?
honestly, Joe, there wasn't a lot of aggression toward each other, but the same theme that I saw in 18 and 20, it plays out here again. This year you have 3 incumbents running, and you have 6 challengers. The challengers, the issue they have, no matter their position on any issue or politics, is how do you convince the electorate to go a different direction than the people who've been involved with this city for years and has been a part of the successes that we have achieved on many, many fronts. And in my own personal opinion, I don't know that anyone really got there. People touched on issues that, homelessness was a big issue that was discussed. And one of the gentlemen who is running is a resident of our homeless shelter. So he provided a very interesting perspective on the homelessness issue. And surprisingly, I think he shared a sentiment that a lot of council shares and a lot of people share, that we are being let down by LAHSA and LA County when it comes to homelessness services.
Well, I find interesting in those conversations, and that they want to talk. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I didn't listen. I work nights, so. My issue always is they talk about homelessness. They talk about these jobs and whatever. It's a mantra from across the country. There's never really a new twist, a new idea, something that we're willing to try and make it work. Because again, you look at what they're doing in New York City with the homeless there, and they're doing it in LA where they're taking over hotels. How does that work out? How does that help? It doesn't. It doesn't help long term. I kind of made fun of one of the little homeless encampments that they did, where they put these 10 by 10 shelters up. They put 2 cots in it, a mini air conditioner, and a little place they could put some of their stuff, and 3 Andy Gumps down at the end of the row, and they got destroyed in a short period of time. And
Sure.
I'm not suggesting that those people are bad people. I'm
Right.
just suggesting this isn't helping them. Why do you keep doing it? Why do you keep spending that money? So
I think everybody has a similar conclusion, even if they have a different perspective.
Right.
So the gentleman that spoke about homelessness from being a homeless person, he shared the same sentiment as council in that we are being let down. We are not serving
Right.
the homeless. And I think everyone had a little twist, right? Some people wanted to have new taxes. They wanted new vacancy taxes. Somebody wanted every member of the city to give money to go to a pot to solve the homelessness problem. But it always seemed to revolve around giving more money.
Yeah.
And as I believe all of the current city council has mentioned, the city has given millions of dollars above and beyond what the residents of Santa Clarita give toward Measure H every year. We've talked about this before. We give about $8 million a year in sales tax money to Measure H that goes straight to LASHA to handle this county-wide issue of homelessness.
Right.
And the comment was made last night. In 4 years, after all of this new money and new funding,
And they're asking for more, by the way.
and they want more money, is the problem getting better or worse? And the answer is getting worse.
Yep.
And it's not just from an increased number, right? If we have an office down in the San Fernando Valley, and on my way to that facility, I will pass homeless encampments on the sidewalks, people who are putting, they park their RVs on the side and they make these little tent cities. And there's no bathroom facilities. They're living on a sidewalk. And as a person who, as an elected official, I sit here and go, well, wait a minute. All of this money, all of this time, all of this political rhetoric that we're going to solve this problem, and this is where we are. Is this solving it? And if we don't want them on the street, and we want them in shelter, and we want them in services, you can get attacked by people for saying, well, you're trying to kick them out of your home, right? We talk about the encampments. Some people said if you destroy the encampments, you're destroying a home. Yet, do I really want somebody living in an encampment on the side of the railroad tracks, like you're talking about, in substandard facilities? If they're cooking outside and they start a fire, or if something happens and the encampment goes up and the fire spreads, that damages community, it's not good for the homeless people. It's not good for the non-homeless people. And it was just so heartbreaking. But seeing that everyone did have a similar message, and that we are failing on this issue.
Yeah, it again, for me, we're doing the same thing over and over again. Some of these people do need mental health.
Yes.
Right? Health. And some of them just need a second chance at something. They need to be retrained in work or what have you. So instead of just making these shelters and say, all right, go over there, we'll get to you eventually, I think it should start with, some kind of schooling, some kind of education, some type of assessment. Let's truly help them, whether they want it or not. Let's truly help them.
I agree. I think we need to realize that while we group homelessness into one subject, right? So we try to define it as if I have
education.
If I have 100 less people who are homeless this year, that was a success. But we need to realize that it's not just, let's say it's 30,000. It's more than 30,000 from what I've seen. But if you had 30,000 homeless people, it's 30,000 individual experiences with homeless. And everyone has a different story. And I've talked about it. There was a time in my life that I was homeless, that I lived in my car.
Wow, we voted for you?
Wow, I don't even know what... Patty, can we turn his mic off? That was so insensitive, I don't even know what to do with it.
Currently, right now.
Mr. Pro Tem, I'm going to pull rank on you because I am El Presidente, and because there's a higher calling that I have to get to right here. We are honored to have Congressman Mike Garcia join us.
Hey, wonderful.
Well, he wouldn't answer your calls, but he answered mine. So.
Well, if he heard the comment you just made, I think he's going to hang up the phone.
Congressman Garcia, good to have you with us.
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing, Joe?
Well, I'm doing fine. Jason's with me here, unfortunately, but Jason Gibbs is with me.
Yeah, Congressman, I'm rethinking all of my life decisions up to this point. I'll be honest with you.
Well, somebody who wears a solid purple shirt to work, I got a problem with. But.
He's just mad I'm pulling it off.
Oh, no.
So,
yeah, he can rock any color.
See?
Oh, ouch. So what we've been doing is we've been bringing on elected officials or people running for office and just kind of talking with them about the temperature, what's going on, and what's going on in their campaigns and what have you. And before I actually get to yours, you represent lots of people in lots of cities in your area, and there are races going on in every one of those cities. I just want you to make some comments before we get started about how important it is for people to pay attention to local elections, know what the people they're voting for stand for, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, like you said, a very diverse and really what I would call a full spectrum of demographics within my congressional district. For those of you who aren't aware, I'm running for the 27th congressional district, but within that, there's the Antelope Valley, so Palmdale, Lancaster, Little Rock, Acton, Agua Dulce, as well as Santa Clarita, all of Santa Clarita, Castaic, but also Porter Ranch and Granada Hills in the San Fernando Valley. Granada Hills was actually the town I was born in, so it's like going back home there. And so a wide range of demographics, of ethnicities and political affiliations. And I think the key is that folks pay attention to the candidates and their principles and pay attention to the values of the folks that are running for these offices and make sure that they're they're marrying up the skill sets and the life experiences of these candidates to the jobs. You don't want someone to represent you on a school board who's never really either served in education, hasn't really been associated with education, or doesn't know what it's like to have a child go through the school system here in our local communities. And so it is imperative that folks just don't blindly vote along party lines. We need to be voting for the people that are most qualified. I always use the example of my support for Sheriff Villanueva, who's a Democrat, but I look at him and I see he is actually the most qualified person for that job.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually doing his job. He's a law and order sheriff. The sheriffs are supporting Villanueva. And so it is important that we look at the individual candidates. This is a district that on paper is leaning more Democrat than Republican, but still has conservative values. This is still Santa Clarita, an area where people do support law enforcement, where people do support the firefighters, and they support law and order, and they want lower taxes, they want lower inflation, and they want less traffic and congestion and more jobs. And so these are the fundamentals that we should be pushing for at all levels of government, and our representative officials should be helping our citizens with that and not fighting against us in that regard. So, but you do have to pay attention. You can't just blindly vote along party lines, and you can't just blindly vote for someone because you see, your friends are voting for them as well. We should ask the hard questions. This is why we ended up with Katie Hill in my seat. People weren't actually asking the hard questions and paying attention to her and making sure that she was qualified. They were looking at the glossy exterior and not really looking at the substance and the issues at hand.
When you talk about the diversity and what have you going on, you've got that diversity big time, as you laid out. You also have a large Democrat constituency in that area. How are you personally overcoming the R&D thing?
Well, for me, I've always run as an American first. I truly don't care if someone's a Republican or a Democrat. I care only that they're an American. It's what I fought for when I was in the Navy. Obviously, as a naval aviator, I was fighting for our individual freedoms and liberties and protecting American lives on the ground. And you don't ask the question if they're a Republican or Democrat first. Right. You just know that they're an American, and that's how this job is. It's the same way. Now, people aren't going to agree with me on every issue, and people aren't going to, really support every vote I take, but they do appreciate the hard work, and what it means is I've got to communicate more, and every vote I take is going to upset about 50% of our constituents one way or the other, and I just need to communicate more, and that's the more challenging part. But when you explain a vote, they may still not agree with you, but at least they understand the rationale. They know that you're coming at it from a good place and not just a self-serving politician. That for me, it is always about the Constitution. It is always about the welfare of the nation. And sometimes, the votes are a little more complex than just the simple yes or no, and you've got to be able to communicate the rationale.
No, absolutely. And Mike, I think you touched on a very important point here. Is we so often when you go to the media or you watch the review of a vote, and everyone assumes that your vote is just based on a party's party position or partisan position. But the biggest issue I've always had is just people who vote or claim that you're doing something inappropriate with your vote just based on the name of a bill. If you voted against the Puppies and Rainbows bill, then you're just a horrible person. But if the bill does things that hurts people and it hurts those in your district, and it provides negative things, but has like you said, it has that glossy name, we're doing a disservice to the vote that people are casting. If people want to come in and criticize what we do, but they provide tangibles within that ballot, within that book. And one of the hardest things I think you have to deal with up at Congress is you're not voting on a 2-page bill. You're voting on hundreds and hundreds of pages, if not thousands. And you sometimes get them, 24, 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, and they expect you to read through all of it and understand everything that's in it and go and cast a vote for it. It's not good policy, just in my own personal view, and I don't think it's fair to voters and constituents, and it's not fair to the elected officials who get painted into a corner on deciding on a bill that is so massive that quickly.
Yeah, and for me, I don't do a lot of hand-wringing. These aren't things I'm losing sleep over in many cases, because they are, in some cases, very black and white. There are good bills and there are bad bills. There are bills that are constitutional. There are bills that aren't. The ultimate example is, the Inflation Reduction Act that we just voted on a couple of weeks ago. That, the name sounds great. It's puppies and unicorns, as you say. It's going to, help reduce inflation, but it's actually aggravating inflation. It's adding to the debt. It's adding to all of the economic woes that we are suffering from across the nation. Same thing with the America Rescue Plan that was passed in, March of 2021 that I voted against. I got a lot of grief for voting against it because everyone thought, well, this is our rescue plan. Why would you not vote for the rescue plan? Well, the bottom line is that money wasn't actually rescuing the average American citizen. It was actually torpedoing our economy. And when you overlay the inflation chart over the last 2 years, what you see is that the inflation started spiking and ended up going parabolic upwards when that America Rescue Plan was signed into law, and the cash and the liquidity and all the free stuff to these industries was put out into the streets. And so these are, in many cases, doing the opposite of what the name of the bill is intended to do. This is how politicians work, and unfortunately, we as representatives do have to read the bills. We do have to understand what we call the poison pills, and in some cases, these things are flat out unconstitutional. The most recent example is this week when the President of the United States forgives student loans.
I was just about to ask you that question.
13% of the population thinks that's great because they're going to get $10,000 in loan forgiveness, but the other 87% of us are going to pay for it. And the reality is that 100% of us are going to end up realizing higher taxes to the tune of about $2,100 a year because of this type of thing. But the most glaring issue with this is that it's flat out unconstitutional. When you look at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the Constitution, it's very clear that what the president did is actually the role of Congress. And when you look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, it's very clear that, again, Congress has the power of the purse, and any debts and taxes and forgiveness is done through Congress and not through the executive branch in the White House. And even Pelosi said that about a year ago. So, look, these are politicians who are in some cases literally writing bills just to get votes, and they don't have a regard not just for the Constitution, but the general welfare of our economy or the lifestyles of the middle class American. And this is why we are now, seeing $6-7 gas. This is why we're, seeing grocery bills go up $100 every time we go because of this reckless spending and this absolutely disregard for the economy.
Congressman, though, and I appreciate what you're saying, but are we ready to push back? Is somebody ready to file the lawsuit? Is somebody ready to file in court against this as an unconstitutional edict by the president?
Yeah, the lawsuits will be coming forward. Lawsuits don't get filed from out of Congress. We're
Right.
certainly making a lot of noise. I signed a letter yesterday to the Speaker of the House imploring her to remind the president of her comment, which was a year ago now or so, saying that this is unconstitutional and to push back on this. A, we can't afford it. B, it's unconstitutional. But this will be litigated, and what's going to happen is ultimately, folks are going to get their loans forgiven. Eventually, the courts are going to say, hey, this was unconstitutional, and then they're going to figure out how to claw that money back, and people are going to be net negative by the time they get this thing done because taxes will have gone up in the meantime to pay for all of this free stuff. And so, the lawsuits are coming. When we get the majority, conservatives get the majority back in the next session, we'll be able to undo a lot of this damage. But the key with us locally is that we are represented by people who have a business background or an education background. Jason Gibbs is the councilman. He's going to be the mayor, but he's also working for a large aerospace and defense company, and he's got the business background. So he knows the implications of spending and what it feels like to be accountable for profit and loss. And same thing with me. I was in aerospace for 11 years before running for Congress, besides being the naval officer. But that type of experience is what I think should be necessary in order to be successful in some of these roles in the government at all levels.
We're coming up on commercials, so I'm going to give you an elevator moment. Give us a speech. Why should we vote for you? You got my vote, so you don't have to convince me. But
I'm on the fence though, so you got to sell it, Mike. I want to hear it, baby.
Yeah, Jason's always on the fence.
Yeah, that's true.
So look, we're at a time in our nation's history where we are truly, on the precipice, and we have a choice at the congressional level. My opponent, Christy Smith, has marched in support of defunding the police movement. She has literally raised our taxes as a state assemblywoman. She has supported bills that prevent independent contractors from working as such. She has voted to raise our gas taxes. Meanwhile, while I've been in office for the last 2 years, I've been fighting to lower taxes, to cut spending, to fight this inflation. I've introduced legislation that would require Congress to stop spending if inflation is above 4.5%. I support permanent tax cuts. My first bill was this removal of the SALT cap, which is the $10,000 state and local tax deduction, which is just killing Californians right now. It's not popular among Republicans, but I'm leading that effort. And I'm doing it for the right reasons. I support law enforcement. I have the support of all of the local law enforcement agencies because we need security. We need a strong economy. We've got to reestablish ourselves on the globe as the preeminent superpower, take pride in our country, take pride in our military. And as you guys know, I brought home 115 American and SIV partners out of Afghanistan. A year later, we're still working on that. But these are the types of issues that the average voter cares about, and that's why we're confident we'll re-earn the support of our voters. They do pay attention. Our constituents read the issues. They read about the candidates, and we're blessed to have good constituents and informed voters in this district.
The two mistakes that you could make is you give a pastor and a congressman a microphone. It just doesn't work out. Well, that was great.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks for being with us. I appreciate it. I know you're busy right now, and God bless. And keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys. God bless. Take care.
Thanks, Congressman.
We'll be back in a minute. We'll have Jesus Hanau with us, running for Saugus Union School Board. I'm back. I don't know about Jason. He's out getting water. My God, you see him walking back in with the two buckets. Anyway, Joe Messina, your co-host here, Jason Gibbs, will join us in a minute or two. I hope he changes that purple shirt, though. It's really making me, seasick. Anyway, you're listening to Trending SCV here on KHTS, AM 1220, and FM 98.1. So, look, there's no reason for you not to be able to get it, not to tune in. This is your local news, weather, and sports. It's a place to get it, the place where it's happening. That's like a 60s term, but I'm good with that. All right. So you heard Congressman Garcia talk about how important it is that we pay attention to what's going on around us. We pay attention to local school board races. Yes, I'm holding the rest of my donut from my energy. Most people do energy bars. I do donuts. It's okay.
5-hour energy. You got a 5-hour.
This is about 7 minutes, so hold me. I'll have to get another one. And,
nice sugar rush.
The local school boards, local city council, the local water boards are very important that you pay attention to because they all, especially the school boards. Now, I am partial to the school board because city council is kind of, I guess they have to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You like that?
Notice I didn't get one for Joe after the city council
He's
comment.
eating a donut.
So, yeah, and so ultimately, if you really care about your kids, if you really care about what's going on in education, and you can actually step away from the party line, you can actually step away from the ideology and the mantras and what have you, and really look at what somebody or what a trustee, what a school district is doing for your children, then you need to step back and not be afraid to put your hand over the R, put your hand over the D, and vote for the person, vote for the people that'll really make your child's experience that much better. And we saw what happened, not just here in the Valley, but across the country over the last couple of years. Our children were hurt. They were emotionally hurt. Some of them physically after some of the things that they went through and what have you. And we can't let that happen again. You've got to put your political partisanship aside, and you've got to vote for the people that'll truly make it happen for your children. You want to do the introduction? I want to finish my donut.
All right, are you done with your diatribe?
No. Oh no, I could go for another half hour. But go ahead.
Boy, there's some irony about a guy that runs a partisan talk show talking about getting rid of R&D. But no problem. Finish your donut. We'll get back to that in a minute. No, ladies and gentlemen, so we have Jesus Hanau in here with us, and I think Mr. Messina mentioned, and that's my water, Mr. Messina.
And I took your water.
No, that is your water. I believe you're running for District 5? One. District 1. But what I love most about Jesus and his candidacy is he's like me in the sense of he ran once, you weren't successful, but you're right back here at it again because you know how important this is, you know how dedicated you are to want to be involved, and because you weren't successful, that wasn't a one and done. That's not a problem. I'm going to stay engaged. You've stayed active in this community. You stayed active with your family and your children, and you're putting yourself out there again. I have a lot of respect for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You know, it's funny what you were saying, Joe, is that, you know, people want to get involved, but they don't know how to get involved. And when they think politics, they're thinking right to the top, from president, congressman, down, all the way down to, but where it really is, where you make a difference, is at the school board. That's like ground zero for, you know, to get things done and to help out. So I felt that the schools are not going in the right direction. And it was time to, you know, jump back in full force. I'm a Marine, so there's no quitting me. So we didn't make it
Good
the
for
first
you.
time, but it's okay. We're back. We're going to make it happen this time.
Good for you. No, it has been a tough year, you know, for a couple of years now, and we mentioned
You
this
have
on
kids?
I have two. But, you know, I have two children now. Both of them are in the Saugus Union School District, so Saugus has a special place in my own heart. My first real involvement with any politics, if you will, even though like you say, it's not political, was being involved with the Measure Double E committee at Saugus Union School District, and being involved with the children and seeing how what's happening with bond money, because I was always big on following the money to make sure it's, you know, being used appropriately and what's happening at the district. So it's very personal. And Joe's mentioned this in the past too. The hardest thing about school board is you are dealing with the most important thing to people. You're dealing with their children, and you're making decisions for them. And as we saw during the pandemic and during the times of masking, you know, the Hart School Board meetings and even some of the Saugus meetings, it very contentious, very difficult, very emotional, very passionate, and that's not something you typically see at school boards. And you usually don't see that much involvement. And you can see the pandemic has brought people's attention back. And perhaps that's one of the positives that's come from such a negative situation, is parents got to see an inside look at education. It's no longer just a place where you drop your kids off in the morning, then you pick them up and you ask, was it a good day? You're asking, what are you learning? What are you discussing? What do you do during the day?
Absolutely. And for the elementary schools, it should be basic. It should be math, English, science, history. That's it. But it's gotten so political that it's affecting the kids. And I was at a meeting the other day with the superintendent and some of the trustees there and their cabinet, and they said something that really opened my eyes. It shocked me. And some of the principals in my trustee area, they said people don't feel welcomed. And I asked the question, well, who doesn't feel welcomed? Is it the kids? Because going to kindergarten, every kid is running to get to school. They want to get out of the house. They want to meet friends. They want to play in the playgrounds. They want to socialize. So I asked, are the kids not feeling welcome? They said, no, the kids are great. I said, so who's not feeling welcome? They said, the parents. And I'm thinking to myself, why wouldn't the parents feel welcome? That's like the most harmless, innocuous.
Whose fault is that?
Yeah, who innocuous place you go. And whose fault is it? The decisions the board has made, like the mask mandates, mandatory vaccines that they're trying to push, these type of things. It was a shock to me to hear that was going on. But it's going to get even worse. In this meeting, I like to bring out, if you don't know what's going on in your local school board, you need to get involved and listen to what's going on. I asked this question. They decided to get rid of counselors across the board. And I said, well, what's wrong with the counselors? And they said to me, well, kids they got rid of the counselors because they want to bring in social workers. And I said, okay, they're social. Okay, who made that decision first? And they said, I asked, who made the decision? Was it a board decision? And they said, no. So, well, who made the decision? All these types of heavy decisions should be made by the board. The superintendent made the decision. So it begs me to ask, who's running the show there? Is it the superintendent, or is it the elected trustees that the superintendent has to?
Let's clarify though, because I don't.
Go ahead.
All right. So the superintendent usually brings those things to the boards and try to lay out why the board should do that. Ultimately, the board voted to remove them, the counselors, and put yes, they did, and put in the social workers. So, but to your point, it is the superintendent that kind of lays out the game plan and presents it to the board as a whole.
So my question was, they pitched it to me in that meeting that there's a lot of emotional distress and social emotional problems. I said, well, why is that? What's going on? And I thought to myself, they're saying, yeah, it's at an all-time high. And so I asked, well, what's the percentage? Guess what I heard? Crickets. They could not give me a definitive answer why. And I said, well, why do you think the kids are experiencing these problems? And they said, well, we don't know. And I said, well, didn't we just go through COVID? Of course you're going to have these problems. You're masking kids. They don't want to be in class. You're scaring them about this. So of course you're not. But is it that bad to the extreme that you need to hire get rid of all the counselors and put in social workers? I don't know about that. And they couldn't give me a percentage either. So I think that was just off the cuff. But I'll give you this example. I have a good friend, not in our district, but he was in LA County. His son lied to him one day. He said he was sick. He went him home, put him to bed, and then he's downstairs, goes upstairs, and he can tell that the young man is not really sleeping. He's not tired. So he pulls back the blanket, and he's got his iPad there. He just wanted to play video games. He didn't want to, he wasn't really sick. So he gave him a little spanking. His younger daughter saw that. She goes to elementary school, and social worker happened to ask him, "What's going on at home?" Nobody's business. "Oh yeah, my dad spanked my brother," and all of a sudden now the social worker's at his house. They were going to take his kids away from him. From what a dad did was discipline his child, which we all do. My dad laid it out on me, but I think there was
You probably really needed it, though.
To be fair, yes.
To give the guy some
Anyways,
credit.
but this guy went for a whole year going to courts. This is a church-going man, serves in his community. He was a leader for the youth Boy Scout program, and they made him look out to Ville. And he said, "I can't deal with this." He moved out of LA County and went to San Bernardino because of these social workers intruding on his life. This went for a year. He told me he spent about $20,000 in attorney's fees just to fight for his cause. And we're talking about a guy that straight shooter. I mean, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, nothing. Straight lace guy.
So let's get on to you because we're going to run out of time. But let's
well, quick second. So what happens? You're putting all these social workers. You're opening the door for them to go to your house now and see what's going on. We want to keep people out of our house. And is it that bad there? I don't think so. I think it was an overreach on their part, and it might lead to something else.
And it happens quite often. But let's get to now. You've joined the team, the family friendly team, and which is basically the mantra is. They're your schools, your kids, your tax dollars. Parents, you deserve a voice because their voice has been diminished, has been kind of taken out of the system as a whole. Why'd you join the team, and do you believe that?
Absolutely. I think that parents are number one. The family has to be there, parents have to be there, and their voice is not heard on the board. It's just like, okay, thank you. It's more like you're a bother than anything else. Like, let's hear your input. You were elected. Let's take the direction that you want us to go, whatever that is.
No, we had a perfect example you mentioned earlier about it was the parents who didn't feel like that welcoming feeling.
Yeah.
And so when my son started school, it was at the time during COVID, the kids had to be masks, and parents have their position on what the masks were. But what the hardest part for me is parents were not allowed to step foot on that campus.
Right.
I mean, not 1 foot through the door.
Wrong.
And what was so hard for me is on one of Aiden's first days, he's going to kindergarten, and we're all kind of nervous. It's my first time taking him on board of school, and he runs off because, like you said, he sees the playground area, he sees the kids, he's been at home alone, and so he runs off, and I still had his lunch bag. I said, "Oh, dang, I got to get this to him." So I walked up onto campus by about 10 steps, and I flagged down one of the...
Is that when you were approached by like 2 police officers?
Not police officers, but I said, "Hey, my son forgot his bag," and I handed him the bag. And I turned around and I had 2 or 3 staffers around me going, "Sir, you can't be on campus here. You need to get off campus." And I said, "I'm handing my son his lunch bag. He was 10 steps away from me. You can't be on campus." And I thought, so there's my example of not being welcomed. But the thought that ran through my head was not that you were doing your job. Okay, I get it, but it's the idea of that you're going to keep me away from my child.
That's right. Yeah.
Even temporarily, even for a sense, it has not sat well with me.
So where do they find you?
And those are special days, by the way.
They are.
I mean, think about that. Those are memories you're creating with your son. The day that you get all dressed up, mom combs your hair.
Oh, the hair's done.
Lathers
Got the
you
hairspray
up,
in.
and we're going to school, and you open up the door, and wow, the teacher's there. This is your teacher. You're going to the classroom, and how exciting is that day? They killed a memory for you just in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, you're going to have a whole generation that's going to have trouble with this. How do people learn more about Jesus?
I have a website. It's JesusSCV.com. That's the easiest way to remember it. All my information's there, and donations. We need that to run a successful campaign and make sure your voice is heard on the board. I can't stress that enough. The team of 3 of us, that's our message. Let's get parents back in education.
And it's a big deal. They need 3. They need 3 votes to get anything done. and the 3 running for Saugus Union. We'll have the rest of them on too. Charlene's already been on, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we're still waiting for Anna. I think we can
And
get
Anna will be on
and-
next Monday.
Yep.
So, good luck to you. I mean,
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
seriously.
Just thank you, sir.
If I could vote for you, I would.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hold him
maybe
to that.
maybe I
Hold
still
it-
can if I can work something
Hold him,
out.
hold him to that.
Yeah, right. Okay. We'll,
Hey, but I'll take your donation.
Yeah. Well,
Oh.
well done.
Oh,
Well
hey,
done.
You got a $5 on you? I can
Yeah, I
borrow?
probably do.
You're listening to Trending SCV. Be back in a minute. Jason's going to do a wrap up and let us know what we learned today. How do you know about Ren and
care,
Stimpy?
Jesus.
Actually, you're a little young for Ren and Stimpy.
No,
aren't you?
Ren and Stimpy was very hot and heavy when I was about the 5th, 6th grade time frame.
Ooh.
But
And
it was-
wait a
but-
minute.
but
And your
for
mom
parents-
lets you watch?
No.
Oh.
But I was gonna say, but for parents, at least for my parents, the older generation,
say that
it was
explained
They
everything.
didn't like it,
No.
so we weren't.
When I was doing some programming, Ren and Stimpy was my break time, and so was Animaniacs. Kind
remember-
of helped me to.
I mean, I'll never forget. I said, "Mom," I think my mom asked, like, "What are you watching, Jason?" And I said, "It's Ren and Stimpy, Mom." She came down, just watched for a second, and said, "Turn it off." That was the end of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, really, there were references to LSD trips, all kinds of fun stuff on that show. Anyhow, right?
There was some interesting innuendo.
The funny thing about that is, I used to when I was working computers a lot, I would use their names as logins and such. I would use Stempleton J Cat. Remember?
Yeah, of course I do. How about Powdered Toast Man?
Ren Hoek. Yeah, powdered.
Powdered Toast Man. Oh my God, we're going back.
Is it
Patty, do you know
bad?
any of these characters we're talking?
Yes,
Okay,
I
all
know
right.
Ren and Stimpy.
okay.
Rocco's Modern Life.
Rocco's.
No, I know early Nickelodeon. I know.
That was good.
I grew up on
Joy,
Nickelodeon.
Joy. Remember that? That was
Yeah,
what it was,
happy,
right?
happy, joy, joy.
Yeah. Wow, this is sick.
Well, we went downhill fast, Joe.
Yeah. Well, no.
I blame the education system.
Jay, the question, we've been going out to the parks and going out and handing things out, and
Yeah.
we got enough time to pull this off. People always say, well, what does the school board do? But seriously, they also say something about city council. They want to know what city council does, and, short of getting up there and yelling at everybody or having everybody yell at you, take like 2 minutes.
No, I mean, that's the main version. We just get yelled at.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what you experience.
No, but people don't realize, and the city, every place they look is not the city. The county and the city kind of, they're tangled in together in some areas or what have you. So everything you see is city based.
We are. And so the reality, the very shortest version I can give you is the city council, the same as a school board. We set policy. It is our job to set vision for what the city is going to be, what we believe it can be, what we want to focus on, whether it's developing parks, whether it's bringing in more business, whether it's X or Y or Z. It is the city and the city council who set that vision for staff. And so when you hear comments about, staff wants X, Y, and Z to happen, it always comes back to like our 5-year strategic plan that we update every 5 years. So now you're on the 2025 plan. And we list all these different categories from advocation to business to infrastructure of things we want to see happen and what we want the city to prioritize. So when we talk about having more outdoor activities and more regional activities, the mayor and city council for years has talked about, actually she made this comment last night at the forum. She said, when we started as a city in 1987, we did not have 1 acre of open space. But now, through advocation, through policy, through the Open Space Preservation District, through a council that had a dedicated policy to wanting to preserve greenbelt and open space, we now have 13,000 acres.
Wow.
So that is what your city does.
And people don't realize that. They don't know that. They don't understand. You also have to, you can't just do what you want to do. There's 2 things happening there. You really, as a representative government,
That's right.
Right? You need to pay, and you're going to get it real hard in a couple of years here because you're going to be locked into a certain area,
we'll go to
which I am not
districts.
100% in. Now, look, I'm in an area, so I don't have to spend as much money to run. I'd rather spend more money and run for the whole valley because I represent the whole valley when it comes to the kids.
Like you always say, your vote represents the valley.
Yeah.
So even though only a certain number of voters can vote for you,
Yeah.
your impact. We see that the biggest example we can give is the county. Look, we can only vote for right now for Supervisor Barger, but there's 4 other members who can take actions that greatly
right.
impact our valley. Even if it's something that she doesn't want for her district and her constituents don't want, and should I just mention the name Camp Scott yet again?
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of the district where districts can be bad.
Yeah.
But this is where we are. You have CVRA. This is where we ended up. We're not fans of it, but
Oh, I'm
You-
not
you-
either. Yeah,
I-
big time not.
I feel that we can still be okay as a city as long as the people who, and I would say this to anybody who wants to run for city council, if you think in your mind about what's best for the city and not what you need to do to win your district, you will have the right mindset to be a successful leader in Santa Clarita. That will continue the successes we've had.
You've known me for years. What I always say to you, I don't govern, I don't vote based on whether or not I'm going to get voted back in.
That's right.
I shouldn't say I don't care. My goal is not to get voted back in. My goal is to do the right thing for the kids. And I think we'll talk about this on Monday. But I think people need to know what the role of the school board is, really, truly what we can do and what we can't do, because we're bound by some of the same edicts that you're bound by when it comes to county, state, and what
State and
have
federal,
you.
yep.
And I don't think people realize that. In some other states, school boards have they have more power.
Right.
They have much more ability to do what they need to do. Anyway, we're back on Monday. You're back, right?
I'll be calling in. I'll be hanging out in Cape
wow.
Canaveral, Florida.
I'll shower. Were you coming up by shower?
I'll still call in because I'll still be in Florida. How about that?
We're back here on Monday. We've got more school board candidates and a lot coming on. If you want to know what's going on, check us out. Jason and Joe at 1 on Monday.
Trending SCV?
Is it?
I think so.